September 14, 2019, 4 a.m. The world's largest oil processing facility, protected by billions of dollars in cutting-edge American air defense technology, is about to be humiliated. Not by stealth bombers, not by hypersonic missiles, but by gadgets you could buy online for a few $100s. In the next 90 minutes, 25 drones and cruise missiles will slip through Saudi Arabia's defensive shield like it doesn't exist. Half the kingdom's oil production, 5% of the world's supply, gone. Oil prices will jump $10 a barrel overnight, and military strategists will realize everything they thought they knew about modern warfare was wrong. To understand what happened that night, you need to know three things: Saudi Arabia's dependence on oil, the multi-billion-dollar defense systems that were supposed to protect it, and the enemies who found their weakness. Saudi Arabia isn't just rich in oil. Oil is Saudi Arabia. The Abqaiq oil processing facility provides crucial functions including crude oil stabilization and gas oil separation, and was operating at about 4.9 million barrels per day prior to the attack, with a maximum capacity of 7 million barrels per day. This wasn't just infrastructure. This was the kingdom's economic jugular, and the Saudis knew they had enemies. The civil conflict in Yemen began in 2014 after the Houthis seized control of Yemen's capital, and a Saudi-led Arab military coalition intervened in 2015 to restore the ousted government. For years, Yemen had been a bleeding wound, and the Houthis, backed by Iran, had been sending missiles and drones north in retaliation. In 2018, Saudi Arabia spent an estimated $67.6 billion on arms, making them the world's third-largest defense spender behind only the United States and China. They had Patriot missile batteries, radar systems, fighter jets, everything money could buy. A newly produced single Patriot battery costs over $1 billion, including $400 million for the system and $690 million for the missiles. But on that September night, every dollar might as well have been thrown into the desert sand. The Abqaiq facility wasn't undefended. Far from it. Saudi Arabia had at least one MEM-104 Patriot missile defense system in place at Abqaiq, designed to mitigate threats from high-flying targets. Aerial photographs showed 3 Skyguard batteries placed around the targeted Abqaiq facility, large-caliber anti-aircraft guns, as well as French-made Shaheen batteries from the 1980s. On paper, this was fortress-level protection. The Patriot system alone represented cutting-edge American military technology. The Patriot is a surface-to-air guided missile system first deployed in the 1980s that can target aircraft, cruise missiles, and shorter-range ballistic missiles. But there was a fatal flaw in the design philosophy. The missile defense system was designed to mitigate threats from high-flying targets, but unmanned aerial vehicles and cruise missiles fly at an altitude too low to be detected by conventional radar systems. The kingdom's defenses, no matter how high-tech, were designed for entirely different kinds of threats. The low-flying and relatively cheap drones and cruise missiles were a fairly new challenge that many nation-states were not prepared to counter. The Saudis had spent billions preparing for the last war. They were about to face the future. At approximately 4 a.m. local time, radar operators at Abqaiq should have been seeing ghosts on their screens. But they saw nothing. 18 drones and 7 cruise missiles were launched in the assault, with 3 missiles failing to make their targets. The Houthi spokesperson, Yahya Sari, said the attack was launched from 3 different positions within Yemen using 3 types of drones, and that some of the UAVs released decoys to jam Saudi radars and distract their air defenses. The Abqaiq facility was attacked in 18 different locations. with workers at the plant managing to get 2 million barrels per day of oil. Production back online within 48 hours, but here's what made this attack unprecedented. Satellite images showed the impacts looked like they struck from the northwest direction, meaning the attacking drones or missiles likely came from the north rather than from Yemen to the south. This suggested the attack may have originated from Iranian territory or Iraq, but regardless of source, the trajectory exposed another critical vulnerability: a national defense. University professor explained that if an attack is of a different threat than the system was designed for, a low-altitude cruise missile instead of a high-altitude ballistic missile, then the system will not intercept it. At the Crippled facility, 200 people were inside when the sudden attack targeted 4 separate locations, and by the time staff attempted to put fires out from the first wave of attacks, more strikes had targeted the plant. For 90 minutes, the most sophisticated air defense systems on Earth stood silent, useless. When the sun rose over Saudi Arabia on September 14th, the scale of the disaster became clear. The attack using both missiles and drones temporarily disrupted 5.7 million barrels per day of oil production, over half of Saudi Arabia's oil production and about 5% of global supply. Sound, news broadcast snippets, market bells, oil prices exploded. Brent crude saw its largest single-day price jump in history. Global markets reeled. The strategic implications were staggering. The attacks marked one of the most devastating strikes into Saudi territory in more than 4 years of war in Yemen, and the most serious attack on Saudi Arabia's oil infrastructure in decades, including barrages of Scud missiles fired during the 1991 Gulf War. But the real shock wasn't the damage. It was the economics. Let's talk about the numbers that keep Pentagon strategists awake at night. An Iranian drone reportedly costs about $30,000 to $50,000, while a Patriot missile costs roughly $1 million, making Patriot a worthwhile interceptor only for Russia's most expensive cruise missiles. A U.S. Army general described an incident where a U.S. ally used a $3 million Patriot missile to shoot down a $200 consumer quadcopter drone. The Saudis faced an impossible equation. Drones and cruise missiles are often cheaper than a $2 million or $3 million. Patriot missile, meaning the supply of Patriots can be depleted much faster than the bevy of drones launching attacks. Even if the Saudi systems had detected and engaged every incoming threat, they would have spent potentially $75 million in interceptor missiles to stop an attack that cost the enemy perhaps $2 million to launch. And here's the terrifying part. This wasn't a sophisticated nation-state attack. This was a rebel militia in Yemen. Systems like Iran's Shahed series cost around $20,000 per unit, while first-person view drones adapted from commercial components can cost as little as $500, dramatically lowering the barrier to entry for projecting force. Warfare had been democratized, and the old rules no longer applied. The September 14th attack sent shockwaves far beyond the oil markets. Israeli air and missile defense expert Uzi Rubin characterized the Crippled attack as a kind of Pearl Harbor, saying it would spark a lot of solutions to the tactic of using unmanned aerial vehicle swarms plus low-altitude, high-speed cruise missiles. But solutions would prove difficult. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the U.S. Army sharply downsized its short-range anti-air capabilities, trusting that jet fighters could neutralize most enemy aircraft before they became a problem. But armed drones were rare and expensive at that point. One major issue is that shooting down a $2,000 drone with a $150,000 missile is not sustainable at scale, and commanders accept the pricey shot because a failed intercept risks a budget-busting hit on critical infrastructure. The U.S. military began scrambling for alternatives. New systems aim to lower the kill-cost ratio, with Roadrunner drones and laser systems able to neutralize cheap drones without expending costly interceptors. But these technologies were years away from deployment. Meanwhile, the attack exposed deeper strategic vulnerabilities. Despite unprecedented reduction in import dependence, the United States remains the chief security provider for Saudi Arabia and the Gulf monarchies, but the modest U.S. response to the attacks reinforced concerns about Washington's long-term commitment. U.S. officials announced plans to deploy additional military personnel to Saudi Arabia and speed military equipment deliveries to Gulf partners to bolster capabilities and deter further attacks. But throwing more money at the problem wouldn't fix the fundamental equation. Defense had become more expensive than attack. 5 years later, the lessons of Abqaiq echo across every modern battlefield. Russia's Shahed campaign in Ukraine, despite high interception rates of 80–90%, remains cost-effective because the sheer volume saturates defenses and the cost per target struck is far lower than conventional missiles. Ukraine is seeking to leverage its defense innovation ecosystem to deliver low-cost interception at scale, as using multi-million-dollar Patriot interceptors to shoot down drones worth tens of thousands of dollars is economically unsustainable. The September 14th attack wasn't just an assault on oil infrastructure. It was an assault on the entire economic foundation of modern military defense. For decades, nations competed to build bigger, faster, more sophisticated weapons platforms. Stealth fighters, hypersonic missiles, aircraft carriers, each costing billions. But in 2019, a few hundred cheap drones proved something terrifying. In the age of asymmetric warfare, sophistication is a liability. Complexity is a vulnerability. And the most expensive defense system in the world can be defeated by gadgets assembled in a warehouse. A U.S. official noted that firing multi-million-dollar Raytheon-made Patriot missiles at small UAVs is one method. But there are challenges. These systems are not ones you'd find deployed in urban settings. And there are legal and practical complications. Today, militaries around the world are racing to solve the drone problem. Lasers, electronic warfare, counter-drone drones. But the fundamental challenge remains. How do you economically defend against weapons that cost less than the bullets you'd use to shoot them down? The Abqaiq attack proved what military theorists had suspected. Modern warfare isn't about who has the most advanced technology. It's about who can impose unsustainable costs on their enemy. And right now, the attackers are winning that equation. Somewhere tonight, in a warehouse in Tehran, or a workshop in Sana'a, or a factory in Shenzhen, someone is assembling the next generation of cheap attack drones. They cost a few $100s, maybe a few thousand, and defending against them, that still costs millions. Until that equation changes, the future of warfare belongs to the cheapest weapon,